Welcome to Spiritual Dialogue with Father Rodon de Castro. We are still here at Cariana Lay Monastic Community. I'm Brother Lodi, your host, and with us is Sister Tachi.
Yes, Father, I was just thinking, nothing can happen without God willing it. So this confusion, He knows it and He's permitting it. What is it for, Father?
Well, as you said, God is willing these things to happen. Keep in mind there is two wills of God, the direct will and the permissive will. The direct will of God is what you call divine providence. His direct will is for all of you to be able to love God and neighbor and go to heaven. That's His direct will. The permissive will of God is if you decide you don't want to love God, He will allow you, but you go to hell. If you don't want to love your neighbor, if you want to leave the migrants first rather than your wife and your children, well, you go against God and therefore you are not going to go to heaven. No. But the reason why God is allowing all these things, like this confusion, we're not supposed to be sad because there is confusion. This is a test from God, like wars. We don't want war. Nobody likes war. But God allows it, as Tachi would say. How come God allows it? To test each one of us. How come there is cancer? To test each one of us. Why is there HIV? To test each one of us. So in other words, every Catholic is tested every moment. Every moment we are being tested by God.
Tested about our faith.
Yeah. To show whether we deserve to go to heaven or to hell. Some tests is helpful. It makes us progress in our faith. So God gives us tests to improve us. Yeah. That's a very good kind of test. And these are the one that comes from God. The test that improves us, like when God gives us sufferings. That's to improve us. It's not to bring us to hell. God will never do that. God will never test us to bring us to hell. But there are tests from God for us to find out whether we have chosen to go to heaven or to go to hell. And many times, Brother Lodi, when you do it, you don't know it's leading you to hell.
Yes.
You don't know it. No?
Yeah.
Like your job as an actor, you know. There are many things you're doing there you don't know could be leading you to hell.
Yes, Father, I understand that.
Yeah, I can almost imagine what you're doing. Well, so God will give you some tests to make you see. Hey, Brother Lodi, you're going to hell. Something will happen to you. I don't know what, no, but something will happen.
Something happened, Father.
Yeah, okay. And I'm sure you realize that. Yeah.
Yes, Father.
So those are the tests that God sends us. And the confusion that is being sent to us by God is more for us to find out if we are serving Him or not. Most of it. It's not to improve us. If you notice in the liturgy of the Mass, from Easter up to Pentecost, all the Gospel is God testing the apostles to improve them. Not to endanger them to go to heaven, to hell, no. But to improve them. That's the kind of trial God gives, to improve us.
To improve their faith, to be enlightened.
To perfect their faith and so on, like that. But the temptations of the world are permitted by God, so God can show you whether you love the world or you love Him.
But if you fail to realize that,
well, that's pretty bad.
Because the authority failed to make you understand the kind of life. To teach you. How's that? That's unfair.
Well, that's a big problem precisely because those who are supposed to teach us are not teaching us how to handle those trials. Like now, we're so confused,
Yes.
but they're not teaching us how to handle this confusion. So you have to keep in mind that this confusion is a test. Test.
Yes, yes.
Permitted by God. Not
Yes.
directly willed by God, but permitted by God.
Supposing there is no authority to teach us how to do things, what is the best thing that we must do, lay people, that we should be saved or enlightened? Or
In simple words, all you have to do is become humble, and you would know that you're doing something wrong, and you will be able to correct it.
you say you pray to be humble, you pray the grace of God be
Now,
given.
be actually humble, meaning to say, you admit the fact that
You don't know.
something is happening to you. You don't understand what it is.
Yes.
You're ignorant about it, and you're almost sure it's going to overwhelm you.
I see.
As if you're saying, Lord, unless you help me,
I can do nothing.
yeah, which is humility.
I see.
So be humble, and God will enlighten you. So this is the very important thing to know, that God is always testing us, either for us to improve or for us to know that we're going to hell, and therefore we can change our direction. But the test of God is divided into two.
What are these two?
The first kind is what you call the ordinary test that happens every day to everybody and so on like that. Like when you go to school, Lodi, when you're grade 1, you have several tests. But it's not the last test.
Only the beginning.
You have several tests during grade 1. And you know very well when you go to grade 2, you have several tests. Grade 3, several tests. With God, it's also like that in the spiritual life. You have several tests at the beginning. As you progress, several tests. But there should be one final test. That final test is very important. Because after that final test, there is no more test.
The last test.
It is the last. So being the last test, you should pass it. Or if you fail it, you're a goner.
You fail to live in the kingdom.
Yeah. Because it's the last test.
Okay.
No more tests afterwards. So what is important is for you to know when is that last test.
It's a different one for each person, Father. The deadline.
It's different, could be the same, we
the
don't
time.
know.
The time.
Yeah,
element.
could be the time, could be the same, we really don't know. No?
I mean, could be this test is for everyone.
Except all you have to do is you have to pass the test.
Whatever it is.
Yeah.
Whenever you see it, just pass it.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
And God made it that way so that you will just concentrate on passing the test. No? So the early Christians, that's the question, answering the question of Tachi, the early Christians always considered all the tests as the final test.
Okay.
Yes, because anytime you can go.
Because they didn't know whether it's a final test or the first or the second or third.
Okay.
Like if you're a grade 1 pupil and you take a test, you don't know if
Yeah,
that is the
yes,
final
yes,
test
yes,
or
yes.
the
If you
first test, no? So you have to know the final test because that's the final. You have to pass it because if you don't pass it, you're a goner. So all the Christians, the good Christians, always considered their tests as their final test. Though afterwards they discovered it was not the final test.
I see.
That's possible. Like for instance, Saint Benedict, when he was being tested during his time, he thought it was the final test, so he passed it as if it was the final test. It came out not the final test, but because he passed it, he's a saint.
Therefore, one should consider every test
As the
last,
final
the
test.
last and final one.
And the
Be
only way
serious about it.
and the only way to prepare for the last test is to be a saint.
No?
And so all good Christians who considered a test as their final test always became a saint.
Parang you can't take it for granted. Like, oh, never mind. This is maybe I should not.
Yeah, you might
must not
say,
that
oh, maybe
relax.
this is the semi-last test,
must not
You
relax at
cannot,
any
you cannot.
time. In other words,
You must consider it as a final test.
With the confusion that we have now, the Catholic Church, what are we going to do, Father, if the teaching is somewhat vague or wrong?
Yeah. Because like we said, you have to master the doctrine of divine providence because all the tests are there. All the kinds of tests are there. An example of another saint is Saint Bonaventure. He always thought that the test that God gives you is the final test. So he always prepared for the last test. But even before he died, he said, this is not the last test. And he was right. It was not the last test. But because he was prepared for the last test, he's a great saint, seraphic doctor, Saint Bonaventure.
So, Father, you would say in this situation now, what is the test?
That's the point now. Like what's happening now, the confusion. We're asking the question, is this the last test? Now, if you go through scriptures, you can detect whether it's the last test or it is not the last test. Like I told you, St. Bonaventure knew it was not the last test. He said so. Because Catholics know whether it's the last test or not. It's found in the Catechism.
Are you talking, when you say the last test, you're talking, is it in this last of my lifetime? The last of the whole world? What?
We don't know. We just lifetime or the whole world.
So
but
you're
it's
just
the
saying,
last.
but it's the last. But
Yeah.
what? Can you give an example of the test in this confusion? Just any, I know. What's it? What's a test? Were you going to choose the right or the wrong? Is that what you? Is that the test?
So the first thing I'm
Okay.
saying is that our catechism says you can know whether it's not yet the last test or whether it is already the last test. Because there is a difference on how to prepare for both.
Okay.
There is a difference. And like I told you, Saint Bonaventure knew the difference whether it is the last test or it was not yet the last test. And in fact, Saint Bonaventure said that at first he thought it was the last test, and then he discovered it was not the last test. So he knew. And Pope Benedict
Yes.
saw that Saint Bonaventure knew the difference between the two. And the Catechism of the Catholic Church shows the difference between the two. In article, I don't think I memorized it, but I think it is article 675 or 756, something like that. The three numbers is 756 something. It tells us when it is the last test. It's described there.
Father,
Yes, sister.
is it the one sign for the end is the apostasy? Is the apostasy acceptance of that apostasy or leaning towards it or rejecting it is a test?
Well, St. Paul mentions about the great apostasy, but this has been happening from the beginning of the world.
So it's still not that.
And so that would not be one of the
Not even a
signs
test?
of the...
What?
No, it is a test,
A test,
but
a
it's
test.
not the last test.
Yes, okay.
Because the last test in the Catechism of the Catholic Church is described as the last battle.
Okay.
Is the last test, is the last battle.
Individual?
It doesn't say, but it's
Doesn't
called
say.
just the last
Okay,
battle.
okay,
so.
okay.
Probably individual at the same time is something about the world.
Okay, so go, Father.
Yeah.
Go.
Well, this is very significant because lately there has been a meeting in the Vatican by the German bishops. And the German bishops were meeting because they were deciding whether to give Holy Communion to the spouse who are not Catholic, the non-Catholic spouse of Catholic.
Okay.
Whether to give the non-Catholic spouse to allow them to receive Holy Communion. These are German bishops.
What happened then?
So,
That's a test.
like for instance, you're a Catholic, Lodi, no?
Yes.
Let's say Tachi is not a Catholic. They're asking the question, may we allow Tachi to receive Holy Communion also?
Yes.
Because my husband is Catholic.
Because your husband is Catholic. It's a silly question.
Yes.
Because the non-Catholic spouse is not asking to receive
not
Holy
interest-
Communion
not-
anyway.
Not interested.
They're
Because
not
I would have become
interested.
Catholic.
So why are they discussing it? And the German bishops want to allow them to receive Holy Communion. That's why the theologians are saying, why allow them? They're not interested.
Yeah, if they would, she would have gone Catholic.
Yeah, if they like to receive
I would
Holy
have been
Communion,
Catholic
they
if
would
the
become
husband-
Catholic. Yeah.
Sorry, Father, we have only 1 minute.
So we will stop first there so I can show you how come one of the cardinals present in the meeting asked the question, is this the final battle?
Ah, really? Okay.
We shall stop
Okay,
there.
okay, Father.
Okay, thank you for viewing Spiritual Dialogue with Father Don De Castro. Next time, please stay with us. Father will explain everything to you. Thank you so much.
Hosanna in excelsis, Hosanna